First, I want to start with face and head, and what is important to keep and what is better to avoid. This one example, which you see now on the screen, this is my old model, which was created 1.5 years ago, and why I opened this, just because some solution was great here and some not, but as an example, I will show you why I want to show you this. So here you can see that we have loops around the eye, which is important to keep and make them when we are creating face. Also, second point which you need to think about when you're creating the head is that this upper loop and lower loop must be together. Like we need to think when the character will be closing eyes, these loops will be together. So so it must be really nicely done. Here I see that not everything is perfect, but you need to keep in your mind that all these loops could be done properly to make life for animators easier to close these eyes. Sometimes in game industry you don't need to even have this. It depends on what client wants, actually. If the client doesn't want to have any animation, for example, for mobile games, it's not really necessary to have such perfect, I would say, topology. So here is the same situation, that you also need to done properly, loops around the mouse, lips, which would give a proper animation. And also the same story here, that loops must be together. When she will close her mouse, it will connect. Like imagine that you need to make these vertices together, connect them, so it will be together, and when she's closing her mouse, everything is connecting. Another point is that here I could say that it's kind of angular, but if you have here hair, it's not so necessary to think about it. Sometimes even some loops could be collapsed or even deleted because it's not so necessary here under haircut. But if, for example, the character will be without haircut, I don't know, you need to make it also in nice good shape to make it not so angular. Okay, here is kind of understandable, I guess, the way why we do this. Another thing is about eyelashes and eyebrows, is that it's also important to keep lines, edges to the head. So the loop of the head might be the same, must be going on with the loop on the brows, eyebrows or eyelashes. About eyelashes, that's vertices of eyelashes must be put it into vertices of the shape which we here have the loop here with our eye. Because when animators will close eyes for this eye, it will be really challenging for them because it would give some bugs here and problems. So actually I mean that this vertex must be snapped into one of the edges here on the eyes. Here you can see that it doesn't work properly and not done properly. But eyebrows is possibly almost good. But here you can see that some problems would be occurred in the future with animation. And what I want to mention right now, probably you could see that this loop could create silhouettes for the eyebrow, but you could ask what we could do with it. Like, we don't have additional loop here on the face and head. What do we need to do here? Like adding new one loop? I would say no, actually. Not even deleting on the eyebrow. You're just adding this here and everything is okay. Just keep in mind that all loops around must be clearly going on with all loops on the head. Right. Also, I want to mention that if you have your mouse. Sometimes usually characters have mouse and tongue inside their head. And that is why when you're, for example, creating your mouse, you need to keep in mind that you're just, when you're editing on this line edge, like okay, I want to create a mouse here, you're just extruding it here on the last line, which will be visible, and put inside this shape and make it more circular. For example, I would show you right now. Like here you can see that here it must be like this, right? Something like this. Here you must have teeth. And here will be tongue, like here. Tongue and teeth. So it's important for you. But sometimes, for example, as mobile games don't need it, you don't even need to open your mouse. You're just collapsing these loops and connecting together vertices, and with this option. What about ears? It's important to create ears with topologies like this one. That's when you're selecting your loop, polygons, it will create this circular shape. Why we need to do this? Because in the future we will just select this shape, like this edge, and make a cut here, for example, and we will separate this into new UV shell, and which is how we bake it in the future. I wouldn't say that it's perfectly done. I see that in this side it's okay, but here is some trouble here. But okay. Okay. For now, I want to mention you other thing. Like, also, sometimes we could even make loops, but not usually, sometimes, loops of the center to this loop, but actually not always, but sometimes you can see it on the models. Okay, let's talk now about arms, for example. Here might be some problems with her shapes, like there is not so much edges to make animation, but everything depends. If you really needed it, because this model was created just for renders. But still, if you're creating for games, it's really important to make edges on one of the places where it will bend. So here you can see that here it must be 3 or 2, it depends on how it really will be working, and the examples of different models which clients provided you. But usually this place is bending and you need some more loops here. This place also bending and you need some more loops here. And sometimes this, yeah, so also more loops. I want to mention that the loops must be clear, and if you triangulate something, make sure you triangulate on these places where it's not bending, like you can't triangulate it here or here or here or here, because it will give you some problems with animation. Other thing which you need to keep in mind when you're creating your models, make sure that you're doing straight lines and clear lines. Like, it's really important to make them straight, not dirty, clean. For example, I will show you. As you can see here, it's kind of important to make them straight as possible. Even the shape of the body is changing, and sometimes it's even impossible. You need to create the topology like this. You need to keep it straight as much as possible. On stylized characters it's possible, but on realistic it's really challenging. Sometimes you don't need to create additional loops, just to, for example, here was some connected shape, and I suit it into the body, but it doesn't mean that to create every edge parallel you need to make more loops like here. Sometimes it's not needed, but when you're creating it as much parallel, it's clear and nice to animate. So like this, you can see that here is parallel here is almost good. But you could ask how we do this. Like, it's impossible to, like, difficult. You mean that we need to move every vertex to make it like straight? No, you don't need. Sometimes you just select this line and scale it in Maya, for example, and everything is great. But keep in mind that it could change the problems with snapping. Sometimes the snapping could be broken when you're doing like this, or when you're scaling like this to the high poly mesh under it, and it will broken. It will be broken, right? Yes, I guess this is what I wanted to say about some of the importance. Also, you need to know that, for example, you have here polygons of body, right? That's its body. This is body, and here I created a loop which must be really done properly on the line of to separate between one material with different another material. So, for instance, if this is body skin, and this is, I don't know, clothes, fabric. So, which is why we need to separate it into the different shell, UV shell, and which is why it's kind of important to make this line edge created ideally, perfectly of the high poly edge. So it will be baked better, and there is no problem with it. And you could cut it even if you put here different shading, such as harden edge. Put it here, like this wouldn't create any problems, because it's logical that here in the intersection will be hard edge and it wouldn't broken anything. Sometimes I know that clients are different, and sometimes they could even ask you to put cuts on hard edges, or for example, where you have cuts on UV shells, you need to put hard edges. So sometimes even this could be right. Also, you can see like a good example that here's parallel lines, but here it's not parallel, not straight, because the shape of the leg is changing. Like it's changing, and we can't do this. Here, for example, like you could think that it must be like doing this line, not like this, but like this. I mean, might be good, but no, actually, if you have possibilities or opportunity to do this more like straighter, so it's a really great idea to, from this shape, make it straight proportionally, right? Also, some pieces of clothes or details must be sewed into the body, others must be separately done, because these pieces actually won't be really good in the mesh, because they will be really changeable in animation and would cause some problems, and for example, bugs with animation. So which is why it must be done separately. And also you can see that it's kind of far from the mesh, which is why it's not important, like not good idea to put them together. For instance, sometimes you could even connect these meshes together to sew them together, like depends. But if you do this, it's okay. But you need to keep in mind that, for example, if for animators, these circularized items will be like working, like if it will be moving, for example, like this, I don't know, it's important not to connect them together into one mesh. I mean one mesh by sewing it between each other. These parts were sewed, as you see here, like into a leg, and this is logical because it's really close to the leg, and it would might be the best solution here for game to optimize it. This one wasn't sewed because I thought that this item better to add here as a separate one. But I would say for now that this mesh could be sewed into this one, like it would be better here. So this is a bad example, right? That better to sew it. As much you sew is better for the animation, right? But sometimes not all items could be sewed, depending on how far is it from the body or not, and which purposes in the future, and how it will be used in the game. So you need to know everything about how it will be working. This one could be also suit actually. Now I see that this part and arm could be merged together into one mesh by sewing here edges. But here it's another way, but I would suggest to sew it. Right, next one. This item, big item also, it's understandable why it's done separately, because it was like big mesh, which could be also removed. As you can see here, this mesh, like jacket, was sewed into mesh, and you can see that here is some parts where it's kind of difficult to make polygons when you need to put it under. And some tip about this, you need to cut it, like this part must be really cut it, this under part, I mean, must be cut it to make textile, and when your checker will be better. Next one about hair. Hair is really difficult one for me. I don't know if probably some people love it, but for me it's kind of a disaster, because difficult shapes and haircuts might cause some problems with it. And for example, it's important also to keep in mind that such elements and details such like this might be sewed into hair. Here you can see that, I don't know, some things might be optimized, like it's okay, like this partially could be optimized. Yeah, why? You would ask why. I would tell you why. Because it doesn't change the silhouette so much, and could be optimized, because if you can see, it's simple shape, and this line doesn't change anything. For example, here you can see that it's important to put this line and this line like edge, because it's making some effect and adding some volume here. This one probably is not so important, you can skip it, like it would be simpler. Here you can see it's kind of a little bit angular, so depends on your purposes. Like you could add some loop here, for example, like this, to add it, and it wouldn't be so angular. But as I mentioned, everything depends on the client, and if we will see hair close or not, if we will see it far from the far view or close view. I don't know, like sometimes we need to create gloves or arms really nicely, because we will see it in the game many times. For hair, it's the same situation as for body. You need to make it as much straight as possible. Here I can see that might be with some loops could be collapsed, because they doesn't give you so much information, like so much volume, so it could be optimized. Right, these elements you need to keep in mind that you can't do it spiral, so you see that it's parallel. Which is why like when I'm selecting it, it's okay to select and cut it everywhere I want, so making cuts on UV and so on. Another thing what I want to mention also about triangulation. In some cases your cuts might cause problems, like here. You could see that this poly is kind of weird, isn't it? So sometimes it's kind of important to triangulate it in the way how it will be better. So now it looks good. It doesn't make any problems just because this polygon is broken. So sometimes we really need to make triangulate pieces of polygons, such as here. You could see. So why I mean that we need to put here triangle. What do I mean? Like why? So for example, if we put like this, it will be broken. You could see that it's broken. Broken polygon, which is couldn't be used actually. So which is why sometimes it's important to put triangles while you're retopologizing and making low poly, because in the future when you start baking, it's impossible to change it, because in the engine it will be triangulized, and it could be wrongly triangulized. Also, sometimes it happens on the face, but usually face we don't triangulate so much, because it's important to have many loops which will recreate good shape. But if it's low poly mobile game, it's might be weird, for example, and you don't have many loops, and it might be like this, I don't know, right? And sometimes here, like you see, it's broken. Like you see that this poly is broken. See, like here in Maya, we see that it's like, okay, why you tell that there is a problem, but it will cause a problem if it will triangulate in the engine like this, right? Right? It's not okay. like strange. And even shading is not correct here, you see, which is why it's important sometimes in places like this to triangulate it by yourself, which wouldn't cause any problems in the future. Right, here also in the hair, I see lots of places where you could triangulate, and also this triangulation will help you to preserve a really nice bacon, because bad low poly cause problems with bacon, good low poly wouldn't cause any problems, so everything will be fine with your character. So keep in mind that also you need to repeat the shape of high poly as close as possible, like recreate everything. Not everything, of course, but as much possible as you could, and what is really far. For example, here you can see that this part was done like this, like it was sewed, and like probably it could be optimized and wouldn't have such shape, like for example like this, right, like straight leg. But actually here I wanted to keep it and make it so it would have some additional volume. Here I would say that sometimes these pieces, like why I added this actually. Sometimes clients want to accurate it, or like make more details into the characters. For example, is it a mobile game? I don't know, or not so many polygons are available to use for using, which is why sometimes clients could ask you to repeat the shape. I know in some cases, but actually it doesn't make sense sometimes why we use it, because not really, right? But from time to time you could use it, so you can see here like it's adding some volume, additional volume, like we could remove it and make it just straight, but sometimes it would probably give you additional owl or normal details and so on. Like a good example of laces on the boot, sometimes laces could be done separately, but most of all times, such as also sole of the boot, it must be done like straight, and laces must be sewed, merged into the boot as one mesh, and I don't know, for 95%, but it's usually for stylized. Yes, sometimes in realistic it might be merged, but sometimes if it's really important, like for a client to have a good quality and these boots will be visible, I don't know, every time for the gamer, they will want to have these additional laces, I know. And yes, everything depends on the design, but usually clients creating such concepts where you don't need to make many additional items which wouldn't be suited and so on. So this is all.